I never thought that one single moment could break the very foundation of my life. My name is Matthew, and for as long as I can remember, I trusted that love was the safest haven, a place where trust and loyalty always prevailed. I married Olivia, a lively spirit with a bright smile that could brighten even the darkest room. For many years, our life together looked like a perfect picture of harmony, a dream I held onto even during stormy nights. But sometimes, life finds a way to reveal hidden truths when you least expect them. It started in a quiet way. There were evenings when Olivia would vanish for hours with no explanation, and I could hear her phone softly buzzing when she seemed lost in thought. I dismissed these moments as her need for personal space, not realizing they were signs of betrayal. I gave my all to our home, convinced that every sacrifice was worth the promise of our future together. In the calm of our small living room, I often remembered our early days, dinners under a starry sky, whispered secrets in the dark, and promises made with pure hearts. I was a man who valued loyalty above everything else. I always believed that a strong relationship grew from mutual respect and honesty. Yet, as days turned into weeks, I began to see small differences, a strange scent on her clothes, puzzling messages that she quickly brushed off as unimportant, and a growing distance between us every day. It wasn't until one fateful evening that I came face to face with a painful truth: Olivia was no longer the woman I thought I knew. I came home earlier than usual from work, driven by a sudden urge to surprise her. The door creaked open, and I saw the living room dimly lit by the soft light of a television playing an old movie. At first, I thought nothing of it, assuming she was simply unwinding. But as I walked further in, I saw her, sitting on the sofa, not by herself as I had always expected. A man I had never seen before was sitting close to her, their quiet conversation full of intimacy. In that moment, the world around me faded away, and every memory of our past laughter and shared dreams collided with the stark reality of betrayal. The man's name was Gabriel, a detail I would learn later, but it hardly mattered compared to the crushing feeling of my heart breaking. I stood there, frozen, overwhelmed by a rush of anger, disbelief, and deep sorrow that cut through me. Every lesson I had learned about commitment and faithfulness was now under attack, and I felt completely deserted in a moment I had never imagined. As I slowly stepped back, the weight of the proof pressed heavily on me. I could no longer hide behind the comforting lies I had told myself. In the days that followed, I confronted Olivia, desperate to get answers to questions that hurt deeply. I asked her if our love had ever truly mattered, if all those years of promises had been nothing but an act. Her eyes, once full of warmth, now showed a cold indifference. The conversation quickly turned into a heated argument full of accusations and tears, a flood of raw feelings that neither of us could control. In that intense moment, she admitted that she had found comfort and excitement in the arms of someone else, a truth that made me question every decision I had ever made. I was left alone with the broken pieces of my heart, trying to understand how the person I loved could change so suddenly. In my lonely grief, I began to trace back the steps of our life together, looking for any sign of the change that had slowly crept into our relationship. I remembered the many evenings when I came home to an empty house, the times when her laughter felt forced, and the moments when her eyes seemed to look past me as if I were a stranger. It was a slow and painful wake-up call, and with each memory, I realized that our love had been fading long before the final betrayal. I found it hard to connect the woman I adored with the person who had grown so distant. I wondered if I had ever really known her or if I had been living in a world of illusions. The trust that had once been the bedrock of our marriage was now broken, replaced by a deep feeling of emptiness and despair. As I sat in our favorite corner of the house, memories of happier times mixed with the bitter taste of betrayal, leaving me lost in uncertainty. The aftermath of that discovery was like a journey through a maze of conflicting emotions. There were nights when the silence of the house was so loud that I could almost hear my own heartbeat echoing in the emptiness. I started to question what love and loyalty truly meant, wondering if the bonds that joined two people could ever survive such a deep breach of trust. I felt a strong duty to the promises I had made, and now, after her betrayal, I had to face the fragile nature of the life we had built together. Yet, even in the midst of despair, I found a surprising clarity. The pain was intense, but it also gave me a firm resolve to seek the truth and regain the dignity I had lost. I began to write down my thoughts in a journal as a way to make sense of the chaos that now filled my life. Each word on the page became a step toward healing, a promise to rebuild my life from the wreckage of broken dreams. As I started on this tough journey, I learned that healing was not about forgetting or forgiving the past, it was about finding a way to live with the scars it left behind. I promised myself to rediscover who I was beyond being just a betrayed husband, and to explore interests and passions that had long been ignored. I wanted to become a man who could rise above the pain, someone who could eventually find calm amid the chaos. This chapter of my life, marked by betrayal and heartbreak, was not the end but a turning point, a moment of deep change. I understood that the road ahead would be long and full of challenges, but I also realized that every painful step was proof of the strength of the human spirit. I vowed to honor my self-worth and to seek a future where trust and sincerity would be the foundation of my relationships. Now, as I stand on the edge of a new beginning, I look back on the journey that brought me here. The memories of the past still linger, but they no longer control me. Instead, they remind me of the inner strength that exists in all of us, pushing me to move forward with a heart that, though scarred, still beats with hope for renewal. The betrayal may have broken me, but it also uncovered a strength inside me that I never knew was there. In the quiet of that long, lonely night, I began to see a way forward through the darkness, a path to reclaim my life and to rediscover the true essence of who I am. This is my story, a reminder of the unexpected paths life can take and the deep lessons we learn from the pain of betrayal. I am Matthew, and this is the start of a journey toward understanding, healing, and, in the end, the rebirth of a man who refused to let betrayal shape his future. After the betrayal, I found myself surrounded by a silence that was both overwhelming and strangely freeing. As days passed into weeks, I battled the heaviness of loss and the emptiness that had seeped into every part of who I was. I understood that to move forward in this new life, I had to face the painful truths directly and accept the emptiness that had taken root in my world. Mornings were the most difficult. The sun would rise, gently lighting a world that seemed unaware of the storm raging inside me. I sat at the kitchen table with a lukewarm cup of coffee, trying to recreate a sense of normality. Memories of Olivia, her warm laughter and the sparkle of mischief in her eyes, would flash through my mind, now overshadowed by the knowledge of her deceit. Every sip of coffee reminded me of what was lost, yet it also carried a hint of hope for a fresh start if I dared to seize it. I started to record my thoughts in detail. Each evening, I would retreat to a small notebook and jot down reflections that ranged from bitter memories to cautious plans for the future. Writing became my quiet friend, a silent witness to the changes happening inside me. I scribbled questions, some asked out loud in my mind and others filled with deep despair. Was love ever real, or was it just a series of fleeting moments tied together by promises that could be easily broken? How do you rebuild your life when the very base has collapsed? One long, thoughtful night made me realize the need to reclaim my identity outside of my broken marriage. For years, I had defined myself as a husband, a partner, and a man whose world revolved around a love that was meant to be unbreakable. Now, without that label, I had to ask, who am I, really? I found that the answer was hidden in the parts of me I had long ignored, my passions, my dreams, and the small joys that had been pushed aside. I began to involve myself in activities that once gave me comfort. I started taking long walks in the city parks, where the sound of rustling leaves and distant birds reminded me that life went on. I rediscovered my passion for photography, capturing the beauty in everyday moments, a stranger's smile, the dance of light and shadows on an old wall, the quiet resolve in someone's eyes. Each picture became a step in finding back the parts of me buried under heartbreak. Even in my solitude, I reached out to old friends. These were people who knew me before my life was painted only with the colors of romance and commitment. Their presence was both comforting and a little confusing, a reminder that while one relationship had been broken by betrayal, other bonds still held strong. Sharing cups of coffee and laughter, I began to see that although one chapter had closed, many more stories were waiting to be told. Still, the memories of betrayal would sometimes come back to haunt me. There were nights when the pain reappeared as clearly as when I first discovered the truth. I found myself wrestling with questions that had no simple answers. Why did Olivia choose to be unfaithful? Was there something wrong with me that led her away, or was her betrayal just a sign of her own emptiness? Searching for answers took me down dark paths of self-doubt and regret, where every possibility seemed to tear apart my sense of worth. One sleepless night, I decided to face the symbol of my lost trust. I arranged a meeting with Gabriel, the man who had come to represent my pain, at a small, dim cafe on the edge of town. I wasn't looking for revenge when I spoke with him. I needed to understand what had led to the collapse of my relationship. I wanted to hear his side of the story, to learn the truth behind the actions that had changed my life forever. When I met Gabriel, I saw that he was as conflicted as I felt. His eyes held a quiet apology that words could hardly capture, mixed with a stubborn air born of guilt and self-defense. Over bitter cups of coffee, our conversation shifted between regret and explanations. He admitted that the excitement of something new and the thrill of forbidden moments had clouded his judgment. What struck me most was when he recognized that his choices had consequences far beyond what he had imagined, a feeling that echoed my own inner struggles. After our talk, I felt a mix of understanding and sorrow. Gabriel's words did not free Olivia from her wrongdoing, nor did they erase the past. Instead, they showed me how complicated human emotions can be, and how many reasons there are behind someone's actions. The meeting forced me to accept a hard truth: betrayal is rarely just a simple matter of right and wrong, but a mix of mistakes, unmet needs, and shattered dreams. In the weeks that followed, I became more involved with my community. I started volunteering at a local shelter, giving my time and energy to help others who had faced their own hardships. Helping others became a healing remedy for my wounded spirit, a clear way to regain a piece of my dignity. With every person I assisted, the empty space inside me began to shrink. Yet, even as I moved into this new chapter, the shadow of my past still lingered. I knew well that healing was not a straight path. Some days, despair would come like an unwelcome storm, and I would withdraw into my own thoughts. But I also learned that in those dark moments lay a chance for growth, a quiet promise that every trial held the seed of a new beginning. My nights, once filled with painful isolation, slowly turned into times for reflection and self-discovery. I attended workshops and sought therapy, determined to peel back the layers of pain and find the man I used to be. I learned that showing vulnerability was not a weakness, but an essential part of healing. It was during these honest moments with myself and others that I found the strength to move on, letting go of the past and embracing the unknown future. This chapter of my life, as rough as it was, became the place where my identity was remade. I was no longer just the man defined by love and loss. I was someone shaped by the challenges that had tested every limit of my being. I came to see that every scar and every memory of betrayal was not a mark of failure, but proof of my ability to endure and change. At the close of each day, with a growing sense of resolve, I realized that life, with all its unpredictability, was giving me a chance to rewrite my own story. The emptiness left by betrayal was slowly being replaced by hope, strength, and the quiet resilience of a man who refused to be defined by his hardships. The journey was far from finished, but with each step, I learned to accept the uncertainty of my life, a rich mix of joy, sorrow, and the continuous search for self-discovery. In the end, I saw that the pain of betrayal was a trigger for growth, a hard lesson that, once accepted, could lead to deep transformation. I was learning that every ending, no matter how painful, carried with it the promise of a fresh start. And so, as I stood on the brink of this new chapter, I held on to the lessons of the past and the firm belief that even in the emptiness, there lay the possibility of renewal. This is my truth, a journey filled with heartbreak, reflection, and a constant search for meaning in a world that had suddenly become both fragile and endlessly complicated. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was mine to travel, one determined step at a time. After discovering a new sense of self and slowly starting to heal, I began to see that life was not just a stagnant pool of memories but more like a river that constantly changes course toward unexpected destinations. I, Matthew, found myself at a crossroads between my past and a future that promised transformation with its gentle, inviting pull. The emptiness left by betrayal wasn't completely filled. Instead, it had been shaped into a space where I could find my old passions, goals, and inner strength once more. As the days blended one into another, I committed myself to a daily routine that respected both my need for quiet reflection and my wish to regain what I had lost. Mornings turned into a sacred time for meditation and journaling, a practice I had been hesitant about at first but now formed the very core of my healing journey. I took comfort in the quiet moments before the day began, a time when my thoughts were free from distractions and I could truly listen to the soft beat of my heart. In those moments of reflection, I started to understand the deeper layers of who I was, separate from the shadow cast by a broken relationship. Work also began to take on a fresh meaning. I had always been committed in my career, but now every task felt filled with a purpose that went beyond just professional success. I started volunteering for projects that matched my personal values, looking for ways to make a real difference in my community. Whether mentoring young professionals or joining environmental cleanup efforts, every act of service reminded me that I was part of something much larger than my own sorrow. I began to see that each interaction and every shared smile was like a stitch in the fabric of my recovery. Socially, I felt both cautious and curious about reconnecting with people beyond the remnants of my past. Friends invited me to social events where laughter and shared stories replaced the loneliness of isolation. At first, I hesitated, worried that every smile or casual conversation might undo the fragile progress I had made. But slowly, I learned that being open and vulnerable was not a sign of weakness. By sharing my experiences with those I trusted, I discovered a network of empathy and support that helped mend the worn edges of my spirit. One evening, while visiting a local art exhibit, I met Rebecca, a woman whose calm presence was as captivating as it was unpretentious. She had an air of quiet strength, and the depth in her eyes seemed to hint at the untold stories of her own past. Our conversation flowed easily, touching on our favorite books and the art of accepting life's imperfections. Rebecca's words struck a chord with me. She talked about her own journey through loss and the slow, sometimes painful process of rebuilding her life. In her honest recounting of both hardship and triumph, I found someone who truly understood. Although I was still careful about jumping into new relationships, I sensed that Rebecca might be a guiding light along my path, a symbol of hope and renewal. In the weeks that followed, Rebecca and I began to build a friendship founded on mutual understanding and respect. We explored small cafes, attended poetry readings, and sometimes simply sat in quiet companionship, enjoying the unspoken bond forming between us. It wasn't the explosive passion of a first love, but rather a gentle, steady warmth of friendship that promised stability and the chance for something deeper. In her, I started to see a future where trust and openness could coexist without the heavy scars of the past. Still, the path to healing was not free of unexpected setbacks. There were times when memories of betrayal would suddenly flood back, uninvited and overwhelming, threatening to drag me back into the darkness I had worked so hard to escape. One particularly rough evening, while walking alone beneath the city lights, I was overwhelmed by a surge of grief and anger. The distant sound of traffic and the soft murmur of other people faded away as I struggled with the raw emotions of betrayal and loss. In that vulnerable moment, I realized that healing wasn't a straight line, it was full of highs and lows, each one an essential part of the journey toward wholeness. Searching for comfort, I returned home and dove into the world of art, a passion I had once pushed aside after my marriage fell apart. I began painting again, with every brushstroke serving as a way to express my inner turmoil and a step toward understanding myself. The canvas turned into my personal confessional, a space where I could let out deep-seated emotions and turn the unspoken into colors and textures. Through my art, I faced the complex mosaic of my feelings: loss, regret, hope, and resilience, each layer combining to form a picture of a man slowly reclaiming his true self. At the same time, my relationship with Rebecca deepened, filled with a gentle closeness that was both soothing and exciting in a cautious way. Our talks often wandered into new territory, discussions about trust, the fragile nature of human bonds, and the delicate art of forgiveness. It was through these exchanges that I learned healing didn't mean erasing the past, but rather weaving its lessons into a new, stronger version of myself. With every story shared and every tentative laugh, the heavy burden of betrayal began to feel a little lighter, replaced by the promise of a life reimagined. I also found comfort in revisiting familiar places from my youth, spots that once symbolized a simpler, more hopeful time. Walking through well-known streets and parks, I let myself be enveloped by memories from before the heartbreak. These trips were bittersweet, serving as gentle reminders of both what was lost and what could still be recovered. With each step, I accepted the full range of my experiences, realizing that the scars from betrayal were not marks of weakness, but symbols of survival and growth. As I stood on the brink of a new chapter, I realized that the turning tide wasn't about forgetting the past but learning to move through it with wisdom and kindness. The experiences that had once shattered me were now the building blocks for a stronger, more genuine self. I came to understand that true healing meant bringing together the broken pieces of my soul into a unified whole, a process that required patience, bravery, and a steady commitment to self-love. When I looked in the mirror, I no longer saw just the man defined by the pain of betrayal. I saw someone reborn, a man who had endured, learned, and grown stronger with every challenge. The road ahead was still uncertain and held the potential for both joy and sorrow, but I felt ready to face it with a fresh sense of purpose. With Rebecca beside me as a friend, a trusted confidant, and perhaps even more, I welcomed the unpredictable beauty of life, a tapestry woven from threads of past regrets and future hopes. This chapter, marked by the changing tide of my emotions, stood as a testament to the strength of the human spirit. It reminded me that even after deep loss, there remains a lasting ability to find beauty, rebuild, and love again. I learned that every heartbreak carries within it a seed of transformation, waiting to grow through time, compassion, and the relentless will to overcome hardship. And so, as I ended another day filled with a soft glow of hope and the promise of tomorrow, I held tight to the belief that this turning tide was not the end of my story but just a prelude to greater chapters yet to come, a future where love, in all its forms, could once again find a home in my heart. As the months passed, I began to see that healing wasn't a fixed endpoint but an ongoing journey, a slow unfolding of life's mysteries and revelations. My heart, once weighed down by the sting of betrayal, now fluttered with cautious hope and a fresh sense of renewal I had never imagined. I, Matthew, found myself on the edge of a new chapter, where the old scars had become stepping stones toward a brighter future. Each morning held a gentle magic as I woke with the rising sun, its warm light spilling into my room and softly promising a new start. Every sunrise reminded me that no matter how long the night, daylight would always come again. I made it a habit to step outside and breathe in the cool, crisp air, letting it fill me with quiet resolve. Those peaceful moments alone helped me reconnect with both the world and my inner self, reassuring me that I could still feel, love, and move forward. My relationship with Rebecca continued to blossom, growing deeper with every shared conversation and quiet moment. What began as a simple friendship built on mutual understanding slowly evolved into something tender and meaningful. Rebecca, with her kind eyes and warm smile, became not only a trusted friend but also a beacon of hope, inspiring me to believe in love once more. Together, we explored hidden corners of the city and even ventured into the less traveled parts of our hearts. We laughed about life's quirks, shared stories of personal loss and victory, and accepted that, though the future was uncertain, it was full of endless possibilities. On one clear autumn afternoon, as golden leaves twirled around us in the park, we sat on a weathered bench beneath a broad oak tree. The calm of the day, punctuated only by soft conversations of passers-by, created a perfect moment. Then, Rebecca gently took my hand, a simple touch that spoke volumes about our unspoken understanding. In that instant, I realized that while the past had left its mark of sorrow, it had also cleared the way for new beginnings. The pain of betrayal, once so overpowering, now felt like a distant murmur, replaced by an appreciation for life's ability to renew and transform. I often reflected on the long journey that had brought me here, a journey filled with the crushing weight of betrayal, the slow climb out of despair, and the gradual rediscovery of my self-worth. It wasn't a smooth path. There were days when old doubts and pain crept back in, threatening to undo the progress I had made. Yet, I learned that those moments were brief, and the strength I had built was far stronger than any temporary setback. One evening, after a day of work and quiet thought, I visited a small gallery that had become my refuge. The walls were decorated with paintings that captured the raw spectrum of human emotions, each brushstroke a record of the artist's journey through joy and sorrow. As I moved from one piece to the next, I felt a deep connection with the art. It was as if each canvas spoke directly to me, echoing my own struggles and victories. In that moment, I understood that art, much like life, was about accepting imperfections and finding beauty in chaos. Inspired, I returned home and picked up my old paintbrush, a tool I had once set aside after the betrayal. Slowly, I began to paint again, mixing vibrant hues with somber shades to express my pain and hope in a tapestry of redemption. Work too took on new meaning. Tasks that I once approached as obligations now resonated with a deeper purpose. I threw myself into projects that not only challenged me intellectually but also stirred my compassion. Volunteering at community centers and mentoring young professionals became ways for me to give back, share what I had learned, and help others avoid the loneliness I once felt. Through these acts, I discovered that lending a hand was also a way of healing myself, reminding me that our lives are closely linked and that every kind deed adds to the collective strength of our community. Rebecca and I began making simple plans for the future. We talked about small dreams, traveling to new places, enjoying quiet meals at little cafes, and building a home filled with laughter and light. Though neither of us could completely erase the past, we both understood that we had the power to shape what lay ahead. Each decision and every brave moment was a step away from the shadows of yesterday. I also reconnected with family and old friends who had supported me through the darkest times. Their steady presence reminded me that I was never truly alone. With their encouragement, I started hosting small gatherings at my home, an evening of shared stories, music, and food that celebrated not just survival but the rich connections we all share. These moments of togetherness strengthened my belief that even when life is broken, it still holds the promise of renewal. Of course, there were still quiet moments when memories of the past whispered their familiar tune. But now, I viewed those memories with the wisdom of someone who had grown. Each painful recollection had helped shape who I was, a man who learned to navigate heartbreak with resilience and grace. I was no longer defined solely by the betrayal that once upended my world. I was defined by my courage to rebuild, to turn sorrow into art, and to see beauty even in broken things. One chilly evening, as I sat by my window watching city lights shimmer against the dark sky, I felt deep gratitude. I was thankful for the lessons I'd learned, the unexpected friendships, and the quiet moments of self-discovery that lit my way. I realized that every ending held the promise of a new beginning. Though the pain hadn't vanished entirely, it had transformed into a part of me, a reminder of my strength and my ability to love again. In that quiet moment, I made a silent promise to myself, to keep embracing life with an open heart, to honor the past while welcoming the future with all its unknowns, and to remember that even in our darkest hours, a new dawn is always on the horizon. I was ready to step fully into the light of a new day, one where I could cherish memories without being held captive by them, where tomorrow's promise could outshine yesterday's sorrows. This is my story, a testament to resilience, the beauty of transformation, and the endless chance for redemption. I am Matthew, a man who has learned that the journey from betrayal to renewal is filled with challenges but also rich with moments of deep beauty and hope. As I close this chapter and look ahead to an unwritten future, I welcome the new dawn with a heart that has been broken, mended, and ultimately reborn.